You drop your baby off with grandma for 2 hours. Everything's fine. Happy waves, no tears. Everyone's calm. Then you walk back through that door, and the scream that comes out of your child makes you question everything. Full meltdown, arms reaching, face red. The kind of crying that sounds like you abandoned them for weeks instead of one grocery run. Most parents assume they did something wrong. Maybe the baby missed them too much. Maybe they left too soon. Maybe grandma said something. But developmental psychologists have spent decades studying this exact moment, the reunion after separation. And what they've discovered flips the entire narrative. That crying isn't what you think it is. Let's start with what sounds like a contradiction. Your baby was probably fine the entire time you were gone. Not pretending. Actually, fine. Playing. Eating. Maybe even laughing. The daycare worker tells you they stopped crying 30 seconds after you left. Grandma says they didn't fuss once. You check the baby monitor footage later. And sure enough, your kid spent the last hour stacking blocks like nothing happened. So why the theatrical breakdown the second you return? Researchers call it emotional decompression. Your baby has been holding it together. Not consciously. They're not sitting there thinking I must remain calm until mother returns, but their nervous system has been in management mode. When you're gone, your baby's brain recognizes that the person who responds fastest, who understands their cues best, who regulates their emotions most effectively, isn't available, so they adapt. They cope. They manage their internal stress without their primary support system. Then you walk back in, and every ounce of that managed stress comes flooding out at once. It's the psychological equivalent of holding your breath underwater. You can do it. You're fine while you're doing it. But the second you surface, that first gasp is intense, urgent, and completely involuntary. Your baby isn't crying because they're upset you left. They're crying because they finally feel safe enough to stop holding it together. This behavior actually signals something neuroscientists consider a milestone. Around 4 to 7 months, babies develop object permanence. They understand that you exist even when you're not visible. Sounds simple, but it rewires everything. Before this, when you left the room, you essentially ceased to exist in their mental model of reality. No object permanence means no separation anxiety because there's no concept of separation. But once that switch flips, your baby suddenly understands that you're out there somewhere. They just don't know where, or when you're coming back, or if you're coming back. They have no concept of time. 2 minutes and 2 hours feel identical. So when you finally reappear, their nervous system doesn't register relief. It registers the end of an unpredictable threat period. And the way babies communicate that? Maximum volume. What makes this even more interesting is who gets the meltdown. Because it's not random. Babies don't cry equally hard for everyone. The babysitter might get mild fussing. Dad might get moderate tears. But mom, or whoever that primary attachment figure is, gets the full symphony. And there's a reason for that specificity that reveals just how sophisticated your baby's brain actually is. Developmental psychologists at the University of Minnesota ran something called the Strange Situation Test, one of the most replicated experiments in attachment research. They observed thousands of parent-child reunions after brief separations. What they found changed how we understand infant emotional hierarchy. Securely attached babies, the ones with the healthiest bonds, cried the hardest for their primary caregiver. Not because something was wrong, because everything was right. Those babies had learned through thousands of micro-interactions that this specific person responds fastest, understands their needs most accurately, and regulates their emotions most effectively. When that person returns after an absence, the baby's brain essentially says, "Okay, now I can let go." The caregiver who left gets the breakdown. The babysitter who stayed gets cooperation. It's not about who the baby likes more. It's about who the baby trusts most to handle their biggest feelings. Here's where the neuroscience gets wild. When you walk back into the room, your baby's cortisol levels, the stress hormone, are still elevated from managing your absence. But the moment you make contact, pick them up, talk to them, their nervous system starts regulating back to baseline. Researchers at Yale measured this in real time. The parent's presence doesn't just comfort the baby emotionally, it literally recalibrates their stress response system. That crying is the release valve. Without it, all that accumulated physiological tension has nowhere to go. You're not just a parent in these moments. You're a biological regulator. Your voice, your touch, even your smell, all of it sends signals to your baby's developing brain that it's safe to stop compensating, stop managing, stop holding it together. This is co-regulation, and it's happening whether you realize it or not. The intensity of the reunion cry directly correlates with how much your baby trusts you to handle it. Now, if you're thinking this sounds exhausting, you're right. But there's a payoff most parents don't know about. Babies who experience consistent, responsive reunions, where their big feelings get acknowledged and soothed, develop stronger self-regulation abilities later. By age 3, most of these same kids show significantly less separation anxiety. The meltdowns decrease. The goodbyes get easier because their brain learned early that separations are temporary and reunions are guaranteed. That trust gets encoded permanently. The babies who don't get this, the ones whose caregivers dismiss the reunion cry or get frustrated by it, they often develop what researchers call ambivalent attachment. They want comfort, but don't fully trust it'll come. So they cry harder, longer, and less predictably, sometimes for years. One last thing that almost no one mentions, that reunion meltdown your baby has when you come back, it's one of the only times in early development where they're completely in control of your behavior. They cry, you respond, instantly, predictably. Researchers believe this might be one of the first ways babies learn cause and effect with another human being. I make a sound. My person comes closer. It's their first lesson in communication, in agency, in the fact that their actions matter. So the next time you walk through the door and your baby loses it, remember what's actually happening. They're not punishing you. They're trusting you with all the feelings they've been holding since you left. And that trust, that willingness to fall apart in your presence, is one of the clearest signs of a bond that's working exactly the way it should. If this changed how you see those reunion meltdowns, there's one more thing about baby behavior that'll blow your mind. Why babies laugh at nothing, at empty corners, at things only they can see. The neuroscience behind that is stranger than anything you've heard before.